Hey, it's Tyler from LTV Numbers here, and I just got off a 4-hour implementation workshop with Alex Hormozi going through his $100 million money models post-launch training. And I just wanted to record some of my raw, unedited thoughts coming away from this, because during the workshop, I felt like all of these fires were being lit inside of me because I can so clearly see why businesses in our direct response industry are struggling. And it makes me really sad because what I see, tell me if this, or see if this sounds like you. You don't really know how much you can afford to spend to acquire a customer. You feel like you're making a lot of gut decisions inside of your business day to day, week to week, month to month. You're doing a ton of revenue and not very much profit. Or you put up big revenue numbers with very little profit to show for it. Your margins are single digits at the end of the month. You're like, man, how do we do that much revenue and only have this much money left over? You're feeling like you're getting constrained more and more and more financially with your business's cash flow. It's getting more expensive to acquire customers. And you're having conversations like the channel that we're on right now, whether it be affiliates or paid ads or whatever you're acquiring customers through right now, like it's just not working as well as it used to. You want to control more of your own traffic because it feels like performance can be so volatile from month to month. You're building these plans to launch a new offer every month or every quarter because if you can just launch more offers faster, that's what's going to keep the company growing and scaling. And it just feels like this stressful, painful hamster wheel where there's very little sustainability, there's very little breathing room, and you're running this massive operation with all these offers, all these channels, CRO, working on 100 different things at once, just trying to build some room, trying to build some margin, trying to raise your scale ceiling. But I just look across the industry and I see so many people in pain right now. And what kills me is that the pain is unnecessary because the pain is coming from a problem that has nothing to do with how good you are at marketing, how good you are at writing VSLs, how good you are at creating offers, how good you are at hiring, building a team, all the things that you're really good at. It has nothing to do with any of those. And I'll talk about what I think it is in just a second. But Alex Hormozi just spent basically 2 hours defining how to identify the constraint in your business. And I think it should be a really strong takeaway that someone at that level decided to spend 2 hours of a workshop just talking about identifying constraints. Because where he's coming from with that is in business, there's an unlimited number of things that you could be doing. An unlimited number of things that you could be focusing on, allocating your resources to. And fundamentally, our job as CEO or a leader in the company is to decide how to allocate resources against unlimited possibilities. And your role, he used the term, is basically chief prioritization officer. And fundamentally, priority, that word, there can only be one. You can't have 3 priorities right now. The actual root of the word priority comes from the Latin word, which means before anything else. It's first. It can only be one thing. So it follows from that your number one priority should be directly attributable to the constraint of the business where solving it will produce the highest leverage. But if you look at businesses, they don't do this. They don't attack constraints. They don't actually have a true priority. And that is a visibility problem. And this is coming around to the thing that kills me. If we can all agree that every business has a constraint, which is what Alex Hormozi just spent 4 hours talking about. Every business has a constraint. It could be a leads constraint, could be a sales constraint, could be an LTV constraint, could be a cash flow constraint. And within any of those areas, there's many things underneath that could be the constraint within the constraint. The problem is most businesses don't know what to focus on because they don't actually know what the constraint is. And the reason why they don't know what the constraint is because they don't have the visibility into the metrics to properly identify the constraint. So most of these businesses operate with a layer of fog over their business. And there's all these things that they need to know hiding underneath that fog. But because the fog is there, they don't have the visibility that they need to decide what to do. So they end up defaulting to things that make sense in principle, like launching new offers, right? Trying a different ads agency. Or we were doing affiliates, now we're going to go do paid ads. Or we were doing paid ads, now we're going to go do affiliates. They make all these decisions. But if you actually zoom in and say, what's the constraint motivating this decision? They're misidentifying the constraint due to a lack of visibility. And I can't stand that most of these businesses have all the business expertise, all the desire, all the drive to be very successful, but they're just doing the wrong things because of a lack of visibility. They should be doing this, but instead, they're doing this. They're doing a whole bunch of different things. None of them are actually pointed in the right direction. And it all comes from a lack of visibility. So what do I mean when I say visibility? Well, in Hormozi's framework he was working through, at the very top is the desire to do more, right? To scale, to acquire more customers, to increase revenue, to increase profit. It's some desire to do more. We can all agree that we have a desire to do more. What exactly that more is, up to you, right? But we have a desire to do more. The very next question is, do you have the metrics to know what to do more of? And the question behind that question is, can you see the metrics so that you can identify which metric, so that you can identify what you can do more of? So we got to figure out what to do more of, or what we need to do to be able to do more. We need to have the metrics to be able to inform that decision, but we got to have visibility into those metrics to be able to have a discussion so that we can figure out what to do and what's the constraint. And when I look across our industry, my experience, $1.7 billion worth of data analyzed, hundreds of DR companies, 99 out of 100 lack the visibility. They can't see what their customers are worth, so lifetime value, expressed in gross profit with refunds taken into account at every single day of the customer journey for every product, funnel, traffic source, and affiliate. They can't see that. Because they can't see that, they can't answer the question, how much can I truly afford to spend to acquire a customer? And because they can't answer that question, they just default to launching new offers. Because they want to do more, they know that they can go acquire 200 or 300 customers a day with an offer. They know it's possible. So they just do more offers. But this is what's so frustrating to me. If they had the visibility, they would see what I have seen time and time again, the norm in the industry, which is their customer lifetime value curve looks like this. Starts up here, whatever your AOV is, starts here, dips down strongly, huge dip in the first 24 to 48 hours. You lose 10% or more of your AOV in the first 24 to 48 hours. So you just went from $250, lost 20% of that, you're down to $200. So you got your AOV that you're so proud of, but that AOV is actually $200. It's not $250, it's $200 because it's a huge refund drop. And then that refund drop continues over the course of about 90 days, usually, and then it bottoms out. So you have this dip. I call it the direct response dip. Start with your AOV, boom, huge refund drop, first 48 hours. Keeps going, strongly dropping over the course of 7 days. Continues down, starts to slow down around day 30, but still continues. LTV's dropping, all the way through about day 90. During that period, you have more refunds than you have returning customer sales. So you're literally losing money for every customer you acquire after the sale. So what you see is, in many cases, a $30 dip in value over the course of 90 days. So you're making some sales, but your refunds are well outpacing them. So you go from 250 down to, let's say, 220 over the course of 90 days. The thing is, no one can see that. No one can see that we went from 250 to 220. Nobody can see it. So all you can see is 250. And so you're making decisions based on this. You're making front-end decisions based on this. And then you wonder why your margins are 6%. It's like, well, it might look okay to spend $175 to get a $250 AOV. But when your LTV drops from 250 to 220, and then you take cost of goods into account, which knocks another 15% or so off that value, now all of a sudden 220 becomes like less than 200, right? Maybe we're down to 190 at this point. So now you actually went from $175 CAC to $190 day 90 gross profit LTV. So it's not the difference between 175 and 250. That is literally irrelevant. It's about the difference between 175 and the lowest point in your LTV curve expressed in terms of gross profit. So the real number is 175 versus 190. So it can look like you're crushing it on the front end, and yet you're confused about why your profit margins are single digits. And it's because every cohort of customers you bring in are creating this refund wave that blasts through your business over the course of 3 months. And so you had a huge month 3 months ago, and now this month your volume is down and all the refunds from 3 months ago are hitting you. And it's like, how did we have such a bad month? And it's because of that. So you may be feeling a lot of the symptoms of this, like, why are my profit margins so low? Like, why does it feel like we're doing these huge revenue numbers with very little to show for it? And come to conclusions like, we just need to go launch more offers. But in reality, what you have is an LTV problem. But you'll never come to that conclusion if you don't have the visibility. So that means what you really have is a visibility problem. And you got to solve that visibility problem so that you can figure out that you have an LTV problem, so that you can figure out that you actually have a refund problem. And most of the problem is happening in the first 24 to 48 hours. But do you see how that's all visibility sits at the foundation of that? That's step one. That's the prerequisite to have an informed discussion here. So without the visibility, you make decisions like launch another offer. But now let's talk about that. This comes to another key piece that Alex Hormozi went really deep on, which is when people decide what to do, when they decide to do new things, they don't adjust for risk. So it might sound to you like, okay, I got one offer. We're doing 150 sales a day. Let's just say 200 sales a day. But you got this LTV curve, right, that I just talked about. But you can't see it. So you just feel what's going on, right? High revenue, low margins, you're doing decent volume. And so you go, all right, we're good at getting a VSL to convert. Let's launch another offer. And the thinking is, if we launch another offer, we could add another 200 plus sales a day, right? That sounds like high leverage. Doubling our customer acquisition, that would be amazing. But you don't consider how long it will take you to get to 200 sales a day. You don't consider the allocation of resources and your team's split focus now. That's going to come from, instead of being 100% copywriters, CRO, ad creatives, everything entirely focused on one offer, they're now going to be split 50-50. And you don't consider that that outcome is not guaranteed. What's the likelihood of launching a brand new offer and getting to 200 sales a day? 10%? Maybe you're really good at it. 20%? 30%? So the real way to think about it is, you could get to 200 sales a day. You could. But it might take you 6 months. And also the probability of success might be, let's say, 25%. So really the conversation we're having is about adding 200 sales a day times a 25% likelihood of achieving that. So that's really 50 sales a day if we adjust it into today's terms. But then there's all the opportunity cost of what if you did something else during those 6 months? And what if your resources, your team, didn't have their bandwidth split between two things? Because you know that you won't get to 200 sales a day over here as fast as you would if you were 100% focused on that, because the team's still trying to keep the current funnel running. So now you have to have the opportunity cost conversation. which is, what if we just did more of what we're already doing and optimize what we already have? Could we add 50 sales a day in the next 6 months? If your team just went deeper on CRO, on LTV optimization, on refund reduction, on backend customer journey optimization, on finding more winning ad creatives that build up your scale ceiling, adding a new channel to the existing funnel that you already have. So you're on Facebook and Google, adding in native or display or Rumble or whatever else is out there. And the likelihood of achieving that outcome, 50 new sales a day from those types of activities, is way higher, right? Nothing's 100%, but it's way more likely that you'll add 50 sales a day onto your existing funnel than to go get 200 sales a day over there. But now another part that doesn't get talked about. So let's say you do those things. You put real focused effort into refund reduction. You improve the customer experience. You increase your backend LTV gain. You take your LTV dip that looks like this and you eliminate much of the dip. So now it's just got a tiny little dip and then boom, we're adding value by the time we hit day 30. You address all of those things. Now you're at 250 sales a day. Maybe you're at 300 sales a day. If you wanted to go launch a new offer now, wouldn't that new offer have a much higher probability of success? Why? Because you've actually built something and optimized it. Because you attacked the constraints of the system. The constraint was refunds, boom, knock that out. The constraint was backend LTV gain, boom, knock that out. The constraint was conversion rate in the funnel, boom, knock that out. The constraint was shipping times or customer experience, boom, we knocked that out. The constraint was, we've optimized all of these, now we just need more volume of ad spend in the front, boom, we added another channel. So now we're on 4 different channels on this one offer. Guess what you can now do? Replicate that winning optimized system over to the new offer. And you will very likely have higher profit margins to be able to use to invest in that offer when it's not working right when you launch it. So that offer, that new offer, is going to be set up for success because now you're replicating a winning, highly optimized model. But for some reason, we don't think this way. And to me, that reason is visibility. I would love to know if there's anything that I just said along that line of reasoning that you think is wrong. Because the reality is, if your goal is to build a business with the highest possible scale ceiling, if you're more impact driven, that can help the most people, if you're more money driven, can produce the most profit, if you're long-term focused, as I believe you should be, has some amount of sustainability, if you care about how it feels to run this business, isn't quite as stressful, then your goal should be to attack the constraints of what you already have and not just keep launching new offers in service of what you say is more scale or more money or more customers. Because that's not going to do it. Unless you can show me your funnel and show me your LTV curve and say, look, we acquire customers with our $250 AOV. They immediately are worth more because we have very low refunds, a fantastic call center that adds $20 per customer in the first 7 days, and then a strong backend and brand that we build because we have a great relationship with our customer. The value keeps growing over time. So we turn our $250 AOV into $350 over the course of 180 days. Unless that's you right now, the constraint is the funnel that you already have. And launching new offers is an incremental win that is also not guaranteed. So if you're operating the business by going from offer to offer, you're actually just taking one low probability of success swing after another. And the irony is, if you want to do that, the best way to do it is to see what it takes to maximally optimize one offer. Just one. And if you say, well, what if this offer is not the offer? The way to figure that out is to have the visibility. Because if you had the visibility and you said our LTV curve, everything is good, then maybe it's just that you're tapping out the market. But that's never true. It's just like we're protecting our egos when we say things like that. Like for the most part, we're all in massive markets. So it's not the market. I mean, unless you're a $100 million company, right? With a couple of offers in direct response. Like, it's not the market. So maybe just the offer's not that good, right? Or the VSL's not good enough. That could be. That could be. But guess what? If you launch a new offer, you're going to have to solve that problem from scratch anyways. So my fundamental belief is step 1, get the visibility. Step 2, use that visibility into, in particular, customer lifetime value expressed as gross profit at every day of the journey to figure out the constraint. Find the constraint, attack the constraint. Find the constraint, attack the constraint. You're already savvy and expert enough to know what to do once you properly identify the constraint. Take one funnel close to its ceiling. In my experience, most DR funnels can sustain between 200 and 400 sales a day on paid traffic with a healthy ROAS, like a 1.5 ROAS on the front end or so, which, by the way, will only work if you have a decent LTV. If you have a huge dip like that, 1.5 won't be high enough. You'll have to hit like 1.7 or 1.8 on the front end because you have to wait for the dip to clear, subtract cost of goods, fulfillment, all that, just to have the numbers back out. Because your back end's not going to be good enough to sustain a 1.5 ROAS, which is a painful place to be. Because 1.5 ROAS is not easy. And if your bar is, in order to make the numbers work, we got to be at a 1.7, 1.8 ROAS, good luck scaling sustainably. And good luck getting to a high level of volume with consistency, because you probably won't be able to do it. So push that funnel close to its ceiling. Get to 200-300 sales a day across 2 channels at least. Right? Not 1 channel. Get to 2 to show that it can work on 2 different channels. Figure out the customer journey. Figure out the refund mitigation strategies. Figure out how to monetize those customers so you have a decent back-end gain. Figure all of those things out. See what the metrics look like for a truly scalable funnel and a winning offer. See the metrics. Build the roadmap. Build the playbook. Now replicate. Now launch that second offer. I'm just so tired of seeing these businesses who are doing hundreds of sales a day with a horrible LTV curve decide that the path forward for them is to launch more offers. Because what they're deciding when they do that is they're just choosing more pain. And it's just an uninformed choice. I wish everyone could shift their mindset to accept that they have a visibility problem. And because of that, they're unable to make informed decisions. And because of that, they're allocating their team and their resources to low leverage activities that are not the constraint of the business. And they're building a massively complex, stressful to operate, high overhead hamster wheel that does a ton of revenue and very little profit. That's what I wish everyone could understand. And to the positive side of things, most people will not embrace the approach that I just described, which, by the way, is the approach that Alex Hormozy is spending hours and hours trying to convince people to adopt, which basically means that none of your competitors are adopting this mentality right now. But the thing is, everyone's feeling the pain, and pain will push people to change. Eventually, everyone is going to come to the conclusion that this is the only way to survive in this industry. So the longer you wait, the more people are going to adopt this approach. The more businesses are going to go solve the visibility problem and start operating from that reality, which means the spending power of the industry to acquire customers is going to increase over time. Why? Because it has to. Ad costs are naturally rising. It's just like inflation. Ad costs continue to rise about 10% per year, which means however much it costs you to acquire a customer now, next year, if everything stays relatively the same for you, it's going to be 10% higher. Eventually, it crosses a threshold where you can't afford it anymore. And no amount of CRO is going to overcome it. So most businesses will just slowly die because they were okay at a $150 CAC, but they're starting to feel it. At a 160, those margins are getting pretty tight. This is getting pretty stressful. At 170, this is starting to get dangerously close to a zero profit business. And at 180, it just doesn't work anymore. And the numbers could be different for you. It might be 190 is the threshold. It could be 200. But over a long enough period of time, you can fight the rise, where you get a big win, maybe your CAC drops back down. You can fight the rise, but unless you've solved the back end, unless you have solved LTV, you eventually will get priced out of the market because you won't be able to afford to acquire customers anymore. And I just don't want that to happen to you because it doesn't have to. It's actually just a choice that starts with deciding that you'll have the visibility to identify your business's constraints, to see through building something that's highly optimized by attacking those constraints over a long period of time. And then you'll scale by replicating an optimized system rather than offer hopping and thinking that that's your path to scale. So that's what's on my mind. It's a powerful thing. If you flip this mindset, you'll be ahead of 99% of businesses right now. But the longer you wait, it'll be 90, then 80, then 70. And also the longer that you wait, the longer you'll prolong the pain. And if you're one of the businesses where you're like, everything is great, I'm not feeling any pain, that's awesome. This is your chance to build a competitive advantage that's unassailable, right? This is your chance to build a gap that no one can cross. Because if things are seemingly working really well right now, and you have the numbers to know what good looks like, and you can see that you've optimized all the different core pieces of the system, you now have a winning formula and a head start on everybody else. If you have an LTV curve that looks like this as a DR company, which starts with you being able to see it, and then assuming you can see it, you've optimized the journey so it looks like this. I've seen it. 90+% of businesses don't have a curve that looks like that. It looks like this. So if your curve goes like this, and theirs goes like this, who can spend more to acquire a customer? Obviously you. So you're going to win. And they will slowly fall out of the market. And if your curve looks like this now, imagine if you made it even better, right? Imagine if you doubled down on the customer journey and the customer experience, and you take your winning funnel playbook that you've built internally through your own expertise, and you started replicating it. So now you're the one with 10 offers, but the likelihood of any new offer that you launch succeeding is extremely high. And if it doesn't work, you'll be able to identify that it doesn't work quickly because you'll know what it looks like to work from a metrics perspective. Why? Because you have the visibility and you know what a winner looks like. Not just what a winner feels like, but what the metrics are behind a winner. Because then you'll have a frame of reference to compare against when you launch something new. And if you build your lead right now, nobody's catching you because for some reason, well, I know the reason. Everything that I just described in here is hard and takes a long time. That's why. This is the long game. But recognizing that if you spend a year cracking one offer and building all the foundational pieces, you can go from one offer to 5 in the next year. And the likelihood that one or multiple of those new offers succeed will be dramatically higher than anybody else. Because you played the longer game, but the longer game will get you disproportionately to the outcome if you just expand your timeline. So that really challenges you to think about what matters most. I know what matters most to me. It's building something that's scalable, profitable, sustainable, and that doesn't crush me with stress and anxiety because it feels like all of my effort starts over every single month because I don't have a strong foundation to build on top of. That's what matters to me. What matters to you? Have you solved the visibility problem? If you haven't, you really just have to decide. And I hope that this video has helped motivate that decision. Because for any business, deciding to solve the visibility problem is the prerequisite to sustainable, scale, profitable growth. If you've experienced those things without solving this problem, you got lucky. And you won't be able to replicate it. Or the odds are just really low. So maybe you will. But the odds are really low. I don't know about you, but I don't like playing a game of chance. with my business. I want to do the activities that maximize the likelihood that I achieve my goals. Step 1, solve the visibility problem so you can see the metrics so that you can make good decisions by identifying the constraint of the business and building from there. In a certain way, it's as simple as that. But guess what? Most people won't make that first decision to solve the visibility problem and embrace this mindset and approach, and they'll just stay in pain for a long time. And the few who decide to operate that way will just dominate the market and build insurmountable leads. I want that to be you. I want you to dominate the market and build an insurmountable lead so that nobody can keep up with you. Sounds like a good place to be. All right. Hope you found this useful. Wishing you the best.